We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to Finances, your home for all things financial, investment, money and lifestyle. Hosted and curated by the very talented team of certified financial planners, Burke Britton Financial Partners. Would you believe that this is episode number 100 of the Finances podcast? Can you believe that, Peter?
I cannot believe that.
Being our first guest all the way back. Who wants to take a guess at when episode number 1 was recorded? How long have we been doing the podcast for?
2 years.
It's close.
Yeah, I was going to say probably 18 months.
No, more than that. So we actually recorded the first episode was on the 9th of March 2021. So I don't think we actually...
3 years.
Yeah, so
3 years ago.
I don't think we actually posted the first episode for maybe...
3 years.
But I suppose I just wanted to have a short podcast with you all. So Peter's here, Delta's here, Amy's here. Ben, too bad he's at home looking after kids.
Still shit, Ben.
Yeah, but just a bit of reflection on the last 2.5 years of the podcast. Maybe some of your favourite guests, something you've liked, anything you like. We're going to start with you, Amy. Can you remember... I know you're going to say every podcast episode that you were on.
No, I'm going to say the opposite. I know that all my worst ones were the ones I was on. But I think probably just getting people on and talking and getting the clients listening to things that they wouldn't normally listen to. And I think the variation of guests that we've had on, rather than just sitting and talking about finances every episode, we've had charities, everyone that we've had on, it's just been such a variety. So I think that's really been eye-opening for everyone that's been able to have a listen.
Delta?
Yeah, probably echoing what Amy's saying. I've enjoyed listening to sort of the backstories of some of the professionals that we work with. It's been great to be in a position to share the stories of other charities and organisations that we support locally. So no particular favourite, although I know Peter's backstory got pretty good traction. So
yeah, so episode number 1, which was Russ Never Sleeps. What's the backstory behind Russ Never Sleeps, PB? So that the first episode number 1, Russ Never Sleeps, 21 years in business with Peter Burke. Go back and have a listen to it. It's a good one. It's actually probably one of our most well-listened podcasts, most well-downloaded. What does Russ Never Sleep means?
Well, my all-time favourite musician is a guy called Neil Young. It's funny, I've just ordered 2 T-shirts, a long sleeve and a short sleeve, that says, "If you don't play Neil Young at my funeral, I'm not coming." So
I'll remember that.
Remember that, please. Anyway, Neil Young, one of his songs, My, Hey, Hey, Out of the Blue into the Black, and a couple of the lines in that are about, it's better to burn out than rust away, effectively. Rust never sleeps. It's constant. The name of the album is Rust Never Sleeps. And that song, actually, after I finished the Kokoda track, which we shared, goodness me, 12, 13 years ago, pretty much. My brother and I, David, who we both wanted to get a tattoo to remember our experience on Kokoda. And his was Midnight Oil's Better to Die on Your Feet Than Live on Your Knees, which was reflective of his life and changes, transformations in his life. And in my view, I want to make sure that I'm going as hard as I can for as long as I can. And if I don't last for a long time, I'm going to go to the line flat out if I can. So better to burn out than rust away. So
It's interesting how you can draw a parallel between just about anything. Like the song, having done a podcast with you, talking about retirement planning, that concept of living life today and not waiting until tomorrow to experience the things you want to experience, it flows through everything that we do. Like it's funny how when we first started doing the podcast, I know Ben and I laugh because I think some of the very early ones, I'm looking at them now, there were a few that just haven't seen the light of day because we were very scripted. But when you actually understand that every conversation that you have with someone, whether it be with the crew at Geelong Youth Engagement, where they're talking about the Kokoda track and people giving to their community and doing things that they maybe otherwise wouldn't think they would be able to do. We've had a lot of charities on the podcast. We had Charlie Crozier talking about his Volley app, the volunteer app. When we run a financial planning business, but financial planning is about people and their life and the relationships they have and the connections they have with people around them. So to your point, Amy, it's exciting for us. It's exciting to actually hear client stories, but also some of the community stories that exist throughout the people in Geelong and Shepparton and Melbourne that we function with.
I think the question you asked at the beginning, Jay, what's the highlight or the best episodes? And I think probably, again, sort of pinching something from Amy and from Delta, but it was no 1 or 2 or 3 episodes. And I think conceptually, finances. We're a financial planning business, as you say, Jay, and it's all about, it's about your finances and trying to give yourself some financial, a health check and a well-being, but that just flows through to so much in our lives. And I think if we as a business are much more community, people-oriented, ultimately you get reasonably good financial outcomes from that, both for the business and for the individuals that we look after, or the clients we look after. And I think that what I've enjoyed with the podcast, all of them, all and sundry, is that they have reflected that real breadth of community engagement and community care that we like to think is important to us.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the conversation we had, about 2.5 hour conversation we had with Rick Embleton, talking about all things.
One of my most beautiful friends in my life, yes.
Yeah, talking all things Veterans Affairs, which, again, for a lot of people, I think, what's that got to do with financial planning, where you've got now probably a 2 to 3 decade history of operating and dealing with, firstly, Vietnam veterans and some of the support services that they require, suffering from post-traumatic stress disorders, then to some of our more recent engagements overseas that have seen veterans needing advice and support. Again, it's not until you actually hear people talk about some of those unique or interesting areas of their life, you think there's life and financial planning needs for absolutely everyone, no matter what they're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got some very young vets now that we care for, that we look after, we support, and the whole Iraq, Afghanistan conflicts that have happened in recent times. And I guess, we have the privilege, it's an absolute privilege, of trying to assist, being referred, having those people referred to us to support them. But when you see the traumas that they've been through and being sent away, people like Rick as, 17, 18, 19, being sent off to national service, conscripted to national service, and then sent to a bloody war. And the stories that some of our clients have very emotionally delivered around these tables with us, the privilege we have of people just telling us the most important, emotional, personal stuff. And it's just, we're blessed, we're privileged. It's a wonderful job we have. It's not a job, it's a wonderful privilege and profession that we work in.
We'd like to think, I suppose, that we've got a fair bit of empathy in that respect too, so we can support people. Everyone comes to us with their own unique set of circumstances, and even, just touching on DVA, Departments of Veterans Affairs, like, we understand how that and the benefits they might be able to receive from the department interact with other things. So again, you can't disconnect lifestyle and financial. They're absolutely interrelated.
I was thinking about the sort of on a side note, but when you were talking about what might be your favourite episode, Amy, I thought it would definitely be the award that you won.
It's up there.
Or did we end up releasing the podcast you did with Andrew Rocks?
Yes.
No, did we release it on our podcast or not?
Not on ours.
Okay.
Just shared it on socials.
Okay. Were we allowed to share it on ours or not?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. Let's pump that one up there as well.
Yep.
'Cause that was a great one. Anyone that hasn't listened to that podcast, what was the name of the podcast? Can you remember?
Can't remember.
But anyway, Amy was interviewed on a podcast. She was a stellar performer on that. I was thinking about some of the other guests that we've had and talking more about client scenarios and client stories. Jason Nelson, who's no longer with us, but Jason had a fantastic story. He came in after dealing with a terminal illness, came in on the podcast and talked about sort of the relationships and connections that he'd had, not only with us, but with the community over the last 2 decades. I know that was one that was very well received and I suppose pertinent to people thinking about getting their affairs in order. Anything else, PB? Any others that come to mind other than the one that you did with your best mates, Cookie and Bruce Anderson?
Again, I think that's the breadth, having such a broad range of people that we're able to call upon to have a conversation. And I love the fact that they're just around the table conversations are really informal and the stories can go in all directions. But I think, again, being able to bring in people that are involved or have had tragedies in their lives or are involved in charities that are supporting people through tough times, being able to bring that to the attention of the listeners, our client base and all those that may choose to listen, because we all want to help somehow. We all have this thought that if I could help, I'd like to. If I can help, I would, I'd love to be in a position to. But a lot of people just don't know where to go, where to start. So by opening the door to these ideas, a lot of the charities that we have need volunteers. They need support, financial or people time support. So that awareness is a lovely thing. It's really nice to be able to give the community a bit more awareness of some of these incredible charities. So, and some of them are pretty close to us. Some of them are pretty important to us. Hard to go past the likes of Wombats Wish that provide for kids that have lost a parent. So it's nice when it's very personal. It makes it easier to talk about it. So.
I think it's really exciting too to have some of those charities coming back on after being on maybe a year, 2 years ago, and having them come back on and now seeing what they've built and what they're building on now and how maybe they've changed pathways for the charity. So I think having some of those guests back on now can help build on what they're building on.
It's interesting that you say that, because I reflect on another one that's pretty important to me. I happen to be on the board, which is Kids Plus. And way back, Jay, when we did the Kokoda track, we decided we, as a group, wanted to try and raise some money. And it just happened that Kids Plus was looked after children with cerebral palsy. So we had a connection. My wife's, her daughter, her eldest child, was born with cerebral palsy. So there's a bit of a link there. And back then, Kids Plus was this tiny little operation operating out of a house. Sarah Olaf was the boss at the time and operating out of a house over near the hospital. And I think they were at the time doing 30 clients, 30 young people a month was their workload with the specialists. And then by the time we were able to reconnect with Kids Plus, and I think I'll put this, we raised almost $40,000, which was 37 or 38,000. It was just really special to hand over a cheque to the Kids Plus group at the Bell Park Footy Club, because Bell Park also supported us. And then, best part of, goodness me, 6 or 8 years later, and we reconnect with Sean Cannon. They were still in that same building, but they were about to move into the new premises over at Deacon Warren Ponds, and now Kids Plus look after 300 plus young people a month. It's just incredible, the growth. It's a bit sad that there's that much need for young people born with cerebral palsy. It's also really exciting for us to have that connection with such a beautiful organisation that do such a wonderful job.
So Sean Cannon was on episode number 9, and then he came back on to talk about the scholarship programs that we support for Kids Plus. You've said it a couple of times, PB, the depth and breadth of guests that we've had on there. I think let's sort of look forward. What are the things you'd like to see, Amy? What are the things, Delta, you'd like to see on the podcast? Who'd you like to hear? What do you think some of the other topics and key issues that we might like to address should be?
I think from my point of view, first and foremost, well done, Jay, on getting us to 100, because probably at times there was some reluctance about a podcast and appearing and so on. So well done. And I think that's also, given other people that real initiative around, how many people have we had conversations with that want to start their own podcast and didn't really know what to do and so on. So, for a lot of people, this was their first attempt at podcasting. So in future, I suppose I would be really interested to hear what our listeners want to hear, because we don't know what they don't know, for example, and what they might like to learn about from a financial aspect. And again, just extending on some of those community connections and locals, because it all just comes back to relationships, doesn't it? Connecting with people and hearing their story and building on those existing relationships. Geelong's a small place, Shepparton's a small place. Everyone has some degree of connection with others in their community.
Amy, anything you'd like to see, guests you'd like to hear?
I think for me, probably I'd like to hear more from our clients, because I think I've had the privilege of working here for so long. I've got to know the clients really well, but some of them, like Rick Embleton, have these amazing backstories. And going to some of our functions lately with our clients and just standing around talking about their trips overseas or where they used to work or where they used to live in a different country, some of those stories are amazing, and it really gives you the context of the variety of clients that we've got, where they've come from, how they came about Burke Britain. So yeah, I'd love to hear from some of our clients if we can manage to negotiate them coming on. Maybe shout a coffee or something.
Yeah, well, it is interesting looking at what is well received, those client stories. Again, we started the podcast thinking that it was a financial planning podcast and that we needed to talk technical financial planning topics all the time. What we realised is that people want to relate to the person that they listen to. Not that hopefully they can relate to us, but they also they can relate to someone. I think back to, I think it was episode 7 with Robin Purdy, when we were talking about aged care, and Robin was gracious enough to share her story and the experience that she had with a partner moving into aged care. We couldn't articulate what that is like for someone. So someone out there that's actually listening to that can actually relate to Robin's story, or it might be to Jason's story, Jason Nelson's story, or any of the other clients. Robert Vandendungen, who came on, was happy to share some of his backstory. And I think that is invaluable. And I suppose it's an open invite to any of our clients that have their story, their experience that they've had with us or in life that they'd like to share, then they can come in, we can have a chat. And it's pretty inoffensive, Peter.
Yeah, one of our long-term, very, very loyal and terrific friend of the business, Alan Dobson, who came on.
Of course.
And Alan is one of those guys who's been in really significant leadership roles in businesses for a long, long time, and he's wonderfully positively critical. He challenges, and he said that for a decade or 15 years. I will tell you when I'm not happy or what I'm not happy about, and we can have a discussion about how that could be improved. So all of his feedback is about what we as a business could do to make things better for our clients and people like himself. And I thought his story was great, and the fact that he does respectfully challenge us, which we want to do as a business ourselves. I think that's one of our expectations of every staff member that comes on board is don't think about maybe suggesting change. That's an expectation of you. If you respectfully challenge anything that's been done in the business and come up with possible alternatives to improve the place, that's what all of us should be doing. That's extreme ownership. Like, if I'm not happy with that particular task, then I've got to find a way to make it better and improve it for everyone else. So.
Beautiful. Well, that's a nice way to wrap it up, PB. I think thanks to you for creating the conditions 23 odd years ago to have a business that's willing to evolve and be innovative. Thanks to Delta and Amy for joining the team all those years ago, and then
long-term sensational support.
Yeah, and sticking around and being a part of what is going to be a pretty exciting phase in this business in the coming years. So,
as you get rid of me.
Yeah. So to all the listeners, thanks for listening. Thanks for all of your suggestions, and we look forward to seeing you at episode number 200 in the not too distant future.
Well done, JV.
Thanks
Thank you.
guys. Bye. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at Burke Britton FP, or Google Burke Britton Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britton Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.